very excited about this guest this morning because this guest is not just a guest, this guest is a personal friend of mine who afforded me the love and took the ride from New Jersey today. He is the co-creator of Enchanted Glass. Hey, welcome to the show, man. Welcome.
Great to be here.
I'm honored.
Thanks for having me.
I don't know what to say, man. So Pete, we met in December of 2014,
right?
But we really became a much more intertwined 2015, and you presented Peace Lights, and I thought it was so cool, man. Like I wanted to write a song right then and there. It was because for me, Peace Lights was tranquil. It is tranquil, and it's very peaceful. Like it's relaxing. How did you come up with the concept for Peace Lights? And after that, take us back to where Rogina started from.
Oh, thanks for that. You know, it's great to hear people say that it gives them a good, peaceful feeling, and we hear that all the time. First time Peace Lights was ever shown in public was at the Jacob Javits Center with the Green Festival, 25,000 people, and we were blown away that people wanted to stand in the lights and have their picture taken. Yeah. And so let me tell you, Eileen Cohen and I, we met at an art event in Long Island City, and I used to make holograms. So back in the 80s, my first house had a hologram lab in the basement. I used to.
You mean like the Michael Jackson
3D No, that's something a little different, okay. But like true art holography, like with lasers, and then you light them in a gallery sort of setting. And so, you know, it was cool, and a friend of mine knew that I had a house with a basement. You know, he said, you know, let's do some holograms.
Wow.
Sure. So we started making holograms down my basement, and we got really good. So this event that Eileen and I met at was a holography-related event, and I had brought a little gremlin hologram that we had done in 1989.
Wow.
And in a holographic gallery setting, you have a lit hologram and then a dark space, and then another lit hologram and a dark space. And my thought was to have some flowing lights in between the dark area. You know, just a little eye candy, a thin little strip of light photography, saturated color. Yeah. And I had gotten good at photography. I started shooting 3D in the early 90s, went to the Olympics with NBC to shoot 3D at Salt Lake City. We were in Vancouver too, and got pretty good at doing this stuff. So I met Eileen, and she said she was a video editor. I said, hey, you know, I'm looking for a video editor just to do something simple, something to just take one of these pictures and just kind of scroll it slowly up the wall. So yeah, I'd be interested in doing that. So we kind of connected up, and we were invited to do the very next installation that was going to happen at the Holo Center, the Center for Holographic Arts in New York City. Turns out a couple weeks later, that building was sold. And I got a call, Pete, you know, we can't do the next installation, but we're going to be doing this massive blowout of a party. And if you guys can pull something together, that'd be great. So Eileen and I got together and produced our first kind of show that played at this closing extravaganza. Probably 600-700 people showed up at this thing. You know, 2 o'clock when it was supposed to end, there was still 150 people going crazy on the floor.
Wow.
So from that event, we got invited to do our first public art event. We got invited to do Under the Viaduct, which was a show sponsored by the West Harlem Art Fund. Okay. And our location for that show was right on the famous Cotton Club. Right, so beautiful white wall right there on 125th Street under the viaduct. You know, awesome place to be. That kind of led one thing to another. We wound up doing 3 shows on the Cotton Club, 2 on Governor's Island. We got invited to the TED Conference last year. We got invited to the Music Peace Marathon, which we did all of the lights in between all the artists for 6 hours. That's where we met. And then it turns out that 2015 is the United Nations International Year of Light.
Yes, it is.
Eileen and I were the invited artist projectionists for the opening ceremonies of the International Year of Light in New York City. And it was a big honor for us, you know, 65 foot wide on the front of the Brooklyn Navy Yard. And it was cold that night. It was 16 degrees plus wind chill after that. So outside, we had our kind of a best of reels. We called it Shuffled Light playing up there. And inside, we had taken one piece of what had shown up in all of our shows prior to that. And I said to him, just break out this one piece and loop it. And we'll just show it on the wall upstairs in the event for the whole night. And we started calling it Drapes. And that was the predecessor to Peace Lights. Drapes got great comments that evening. That was January of 2015. In February of 2015, we were invited to do the awards dinner for the Peace Coalition. We had done the opening ceremonies, we had done the Music Peace Marathon, so we brought Drapes with us to the opening ceremonies.
Awesome.
Everyone kind of really resonated with it. And you're right, it does give a nice energy. Everyone had always said, even during our shows in public, it was how great that clip was. So the chairman of the Peace Coalition was standing next to me at one point later in the evening, and he was saying how everybody was kind of hanging out. If you remember, everyone's kind of hanging out by Drapes that night. And I said to him, hey, offhandedly, kind of like out of the blue, Sheikh, what do you think about something like that video as kind of a symbol of good energy or peace or something like that? And he kind of looked at me, like wide. It's like, Peter, we haven't had a new symbol for peace in more than a generation. We've been looking for a new symbol for peace. Seed was planted. February of this year. It's less than 9 months, or just over 9 months since then. And it's amazing what's happened in between. Eileen and I went off, and we said, let's try and do something with this. So we kind of remastered Drapes, kind of cleaned it up, went back to the original images, and rather than just float the original images, we made it a little bit cleaner. We added the word Peace Lights at the beginning, and then we added the word Peace Lights in 55 languages throughout, and presented it to the New York Peace Coalition in early April. They adopted it as their international symbol for peace and nonviolence. That's huge. New York Peace Coalition is very well respected worldwide, and that was a big honor. Oh, it gets way better. 2 weeks later, on Earth Day, there was a press release that the peace organizations of 14 countries adopted it as their international symbol for peace and nonviolence.
Awesome.
Pakistan, Afghanistan, Israel, Egypt, Yemen, South Korea, Sweden, Netherlands, and 7 African countries. I can't even remember them all. In fact, we've come up to 15. Uganda just came on board, but you have Gambia, Senegal, Kenya, Guinea-Conakry, Rwanda. A bunch of countries, right? About a month later, the United Nations International Year of Light and Light-Based Technologies, that organization within the UN, endorsed Peace Lights. And we just kept rolling from there. We got invited to do concerts. You showed it at one of your events.
Yeah.
We've shown it at festivals now. It's been part of community board meetings. This month we got a commitment from mosques, synagogues, and churches in the Bronx.
Awesome.
are gonna show it to coincide with the United Nations International Month of Peace
Awesome.
Lights. We have a proposal in with NASA to show it on the space station.
Whoa.
And to symbolically, if they have a projector on the space station, to shine it down on the Earth from the porthole, which is a great visual. I mean, it's just symbolic, but it's a great visual. So it's really taken on a life of its own. And everywhere we've shown it, we've gotten the same result, the same comments. It's like this. It feels good. And the idea, Mike, is that we just want to remind people about actions of peace. Just the sight or thought of Peace Lights, if that can instill and change behavior and affect attitudes towards peace, that's what it's all about. Trying to kind of get it out there as a visual symbol of peace. So,
how does it, with all that's going on nowadays with ISIL or ISIS and the recent Paris bombings and now the San Bernardino killings in Kenya, how does it feel? Because I know how it felt for me as a New York ambassador before I resigned. How does it still feel that we're fighting for something that most people still don't even want or even care about?
Well, when you say most people, I think that it's the opposite. Most people, we tend to lose sight of the magnitudes of the numbers of people involved and really and the asymmetry in the effect of those attitudes. So it's really a relatively tiny percentage of people that cause such great issues in this regard. It just really pushes the emphasis back on the need for a concerted understanding and inculcation of peace into society, right? And we're a visual species. You know, everything. You know, we resonate, and most of our brains are tied into visual processing. So we're very good at that sort of stuff. So something like peace lights, where you can think about or see it and feel it, is potentially very valuable in helping that cause. So, you know, look at Africa. The African Union, 54 nations. It has the most conflicts in the world. Mm-hmm. And they are arguably, you know, the part of the world that needs efforts on peace awareness and peace education more than anyone else. And we're starting to get that to happen. You know, there's an effort underway to try and work with the African Union to formally adopt Peace December and peace lights as the symbol, to formally recognize the fact that the United Nations has said, here's the month of peace. Let's have some activities around this, have some focus, some reminder, change some behaviors, align some compasses in that direction. And if you can throw a visual symbol in there, you know, that's kind of like the from December to December reminder. So one of the things when you talk about some of the locations that you mentioned, right? We're looking to take peace lights into poster form and have these posters go up in communities wherever there is an act of violence, both as a reminder, but also as an inspiration for the sort of activity and the sort of behavior and treating of each other that kind of we're striving for.
Yeah.
So the first one, when we do get to the point of having peace lights posters, the very first poster is going to go up at the site where a young boy, 14-year-old, was shot on his way to school in the Bronx, Christopher Duran, last May.
Yeah.
So that's you know, when that was happening, peace lights was just getting rolling, and you know, we kind of were inspired by that. A lot of people that we both know. Mm-hmm. You know, the New York Peace Coalition is based in the Bronx. You know, were affected by that. And right after that, you know, there was the rapper that got shot. You know.
Yeah, it changed. Yeah.
Is that right? So, you know, that I think, you know, is worthy. And every time I see something on the news, it's like there should be a peace lights poster going on. You know, we got a projector and an 8-foot screen donated to us by a great guy, Sean O'Brien. He says, "Here, Pete, you know, like, I'm not using this," and I was going out. We have a Projectors for Peace initiative.
Awesome.
Where we're looking for projectors, because we were getting asked all the time, you know, "Hey, can you come here and show peace lights?" Mm-hmm. And we weren't able to. And since that projector's been on board, we've used it a ton of times and brought the lights out into various places. You know, so it's you know, the peace lights posters is something that I think is going to really get the visual symbol out there. We're looking to work with organizations around the world. You know, you look at the different. This is not going to happen from one location kind of driving it around the world. Mm-hmm. It's going to be everyone in the world saying, "Hey, this is a great idea," and that's what we've seen. You know, we were at the Green Festival in D.C., Green's Festival in New York, 25,000 people each. Everyone's like, "Holy crap, that's a great idea." Yeah. You know, I love it. I love the lights. I love the idea of the lights. I love what it represents. So, you know, those people are everywhere. Hey, if you got an extra bandwidth, you know, because you're for whatever reason, man, you're a student and you got a couple hours, you want to decompress, you know, do some peace-related things. Contact people, look for places to put up peace lights, posters, have it shown at an event or something like that. Anywhere in the world it applies. You know, the 15 countries that have to date, and it's soon to become 16 this month, have representatives in those countries that are working towards establishing peace lights visually. We're working with the African Union on tying peace education into the mix, you know, and there are a couple ministers of education that are being sought out initially to help us develop that presentation for the African Union. These are historic sort of things that, you know, 9 months ago we weren't even thinking about.
Yeah, right.
And it's amazing to me that we're here today having this discussion. You know, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
You know.
So, before peace lights, there was an Enchanted Glass, correct?
Yeah, so I from the holography days, I got real interested in virtual reality. In fact, I remember making holograms, and the guy I was making it with, Nick Pollara, he showed up with an article one time. And I started reading the article, and I was kind of walking around my house, and it was about virtual reality back in, like, I want to say 1988, right? Mm. And this is the early days, man. Jaron Lanier was a pioneer in virtual reality. He had the first head-mounted display company, which...
Like Johnny Mnemonic with Keanu Reeves.
Yeah, that was one of the first movies that kind of dove into that, right? So back then, I mean, the head-mounted display like you see in the Oculus Rift and the other stuff today, this was the predecessor. It was like a 20-degree field of view, monochrome, and each eye took a PC to drive, a PCAT at the time, to drive a left and a right eye. But when you looked around, you know, the picture, which was about as small as like a GAF Viewmaster in monochrome, right, you know, was there. But the picture it painted in people's minds was really what took off. It was the first false start for virtual reality, as it turns out. But I remember reading that article that this guy gave me, my friend Nick, and I was blown away because I was into 3D, you know, I kind of understand that stuff, you know, I kind of graduated with an electrical engineering degree, I'm kind of good at that stuff, always good at physics. And I started thinking about, you know, wow, that's pretty intense. The article went on to talk about Jerry Garcia, and I'm a deadhead. Been to like over 100 dead shows and related shows in my life, you know. So we used to go on tour every summer and stuff like that. And it talked about how Jerry Garcia came down from Marin County down to Redwood City, and he put on this head-mounted display, and his comment was, I'd love to have this technology give me the feeling I get when I scuba dive, right? And I scuba dived also at the time. And I said, you know, he didn't say, I want to see what I see when I'm underwater looking around. He said, I want to get the feeling I get when I scuba dive. And at that moment, it kind of struck me like, wow, that the power of this technology is really to transmit the energy of an environment. You know, enable empathy into an environment, and with that comes an enormous potential power, right? Power might be the right word, the ability to influence and affect. Rupert Murdoch said, whoever controls the medium programs the mind.
Yes.
Right? So that kind of hit me also.
Power.
Right? So I immediately sat down and said, you know, like, I'm not interested in virtual reality and computer-generated stuff. How would you capture a real world? Because that's kind of where it's at. You know, overlaying computer-generated content into real world, but you know, that's kind of an obvious extension. Yeah, that's an obvious extension in those days especially. So I started writing some of these ideas out, and I was working at Hewlett-Packard at the time. I had a real good career at Hewlett-Packard, and I applied for my first couple patents, and actually got my first patents of using large arrays of cameras to capture scenes and having the techniques in the post-processing to make all of that seamless so that essentially you could look through the array of cameras as if it were a pane of glass. And that kind of led into light photography, 3D photography, then light photography, then all this other stuff. But it all kind of goes back to that early days of holograms, and everything kind of unrolled from there.
How many patents, I know because you told me already, how many patents and who do you hold the patents on? How many do you have?
We have, right now, there are eight patents. And they are, in general, you know, using arrays of cameras, techniques about how to process it, some about the making of an array with multiple cameras on them, and some about the actual experience, you know, going from one experience, how do you get to another experience? So it kind of broad, because I've been thinking about this for a long time, you know. Yeah. Back in '99, I left Hewlett-Packard. I got an offer I couldn't refuse. I had been funding a PhD student at the University of South Carolina, with a huge array of cameras. Compression is a big issue. You know, it's so much data, it was crazy, right? In fact, I did a study one time. What was the smallest storage area network that you could possibly physically build that would be able to handle 100 HD cameras coming out of an array? And it was about the size of this studio. It was a 18-wheeler truck, almost times two. And you know, my vision was always, you know, come to the watering hole in Africa. You know, like come on safari with Pete. You know, I just want to travel around the world and produce experiences, right? And so that wasn't going to cut it. So I started a company to go after this in 2000, and raised a couple $1 million. and went off, and I was the principal investigator on 5 Navy contracts, specifically in the area of telepresence and training, immersive training for the government. Well, you know, part of it turned into doing the processing for compressing all these cameras on the fly. And if you're doing high performance, real high performance processing, you know, it applies to other things besides just visual compression. So it applied to radar processing, for example.
That's awesome, man.
So we had the highest performance radar processing benchmarks in the world, became a protege company under Lockheed Martin, and that all kind of grew pretty successfully.
So I'm basically sitting here with Thomas Jefferson, Albert Einstein, and
No, man, it was a good time, and everything was lining up. 2008 hit, and that kind of changed everything.
Yeah.
So, you know, since then it's been a period of consulting and building back. You know, a lot of that just kind of happened when we had an investor that defaulted. So what we did was, after the government focus on all the immersive training, I had met a famous, awesome Hollywood guy, visual effects guy named George Johnson. We were both on a 3D panel at the Santa Fe Film Festival in 2007. And he was the executive producer of Babylon 5, has done 38 3D productions, 22 IMAXs, the 3D Borg ride at Universal. He's been the only producer of content on Fremont Street in Vegas since it's opened, and tons more stuff, right? Two technical Oscars and Emmy, you know, sort of thing. So we started talking. He's like, you know, not a lot of people like really realize that your approach with the cameras is really the only way that it could happen, you know, the way you're describing. I'm like, yeah, you know, it's like, it's been a challenge because it's been so far ahead of the curve, and we've been able to focus on the government to get the funding because that's the only. So it's like, yes. So George and I hooked up in 2010 again. We always wanted to form an entity, and 2010 we kind of decided to go ahead and do that. So we kind of figured it out. And now Enchanted Glass is an entity, if not a production entity yet, but that's kind of the umbrella under which we're going to apply this intellectual property to go after and do this. So that's kind of what's going on that part of. Thank you much, man.
I hope
been
to have you back.
being here.
I will have him back, and like I was saying, everyone deserves peace within themselves, because see, peace begins within yourself. And trust me, download the Peace Lights, play it while you're listening to some smooth sounding music or whatever music you're listening to, washing the dishes or whatever you're doing. Trust me, man, Peace Lights is definitely gonna bring you to a nice space within yourself. I'm Mikey J, and this has been a dynamic conversation with Mikey J. Peace.